Space. It's this vast, boundless thing that surrounds our tiny home planet. For centuries, its mysteries and unreachable depths have captivated humanity. Over time, we've taken the first, even the second steps toward exploring the depths of interstellar space, but going further? That's still out of our reach. Dreams of the cosmos are increasingly finding their way into movies. More and more films are tackling this theme. It's time to dive into what directors have been putting on the big screen. In this video, I'll walk you through how filmmakers have portrayed space over the last 123 years and highlight the best space movies out there. The best and the most realistic ones. This list will focus on films that lean into realism, so don't expect stuff like Star Wars or Star Trek. It's amazing, but space films are more than 120 years old. For the first time in cinema, humanity flew into space in the distant 1902 when the film A Trip to the Moon by Georges Méliès was released. Based on books like H.G. Wells' The First Man in the Moon and Jules Verne's From the Earth to the Moon, the story follows a group of Earth explorers who head to our lunar neighbor inside a hollow rocket launched by a giant cannon. The film runs for just 14 minutes, and it wasn't only the first space movie, but also the first sci-fi film in history. This is the movie with that iconic scene where the rocket lands right in the moon's eye.
Until finally, it attains colossal dimensions. Suddenly, the shell pierces the eye of the moon.
Did you know that the first feature-length space movie was a Soviet adaptation of Alexei Tolstoy's novel Aelita, filmed in the USSR in 1924 by Yakov Protazanov? Back then, the release of this film was a national sensation, thanks in large part to an unprecedented advertising campaign that kicked off 6 months before the premiere. The story unfolds in two worlds, post-revolutionary Moscow and the planet Mars. The main character, an engineer named Los, builds a spaceship and, along with a Red Army soldier named Gusev, blasts off to Mars. There, they meet Aelita, the Queen of Mars, who's been secretly watching life on Earth through a telescope. This film, especially its space interiors and costumes, had a massive influence on later sci-fi movies. Back in the early 20th century, realistic space movies were still a long way off, but the efforts were already underway. The German film Woman in the Moon, directed by Fritz Lang in 1929, aimed to depict a space mission as authentically as possible. To pull this off, they brought in renowned engineer Hermann Oberth, and the filmmakers even built a real rocket for the shoot. This movie is also notable for being the first to show a countdown before a rocket launch, a technique that later became standard in real-life space missions. A few years later, the USSR released Spaceflight, created with the involvement of Konstantin Tsiolkovsky. Director Vasily Zhuravlev, much like his German counterpart, aimed to make the film as realistic as possible. Thanks to Tsiolkovsky's expertise, they crafted a believable spaceship and launch scene. But what's truly remarkable is that this movie was the first to depict weightlessness in space. In the 1950s and 60s, humanity was actively conquering space in real life, and the fascination with space exploration only grew stronger. A number of films came out in the US, but a true milestone was the Soviet movie Planet of Storms from 1961, a story about an expedition to Venus. For its time, the film boasted groundbreaking special effects. Director Pavel Klushentsev pioneered a range of innovative techniques to create convincing space scenes. His methods for composite filming were so impressive that American filmmakers later studied them. On top of that, the movie stood out for its scientific accuracy. Despite its fictional plot, the creators aimed for maximum realism in depicting space technology and the conditions on Venus, at least, based on what was known back then.
Нет. Людям свойственны страх и эгоизм.
Людям свойственна дружба.
At the turn of the 60s and 70s, the world was treated to Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey in 1968. followed by 2 Soviet adaptations of Stanislaw Lem's Solaris. The first came out in 1968, directed by Boris Nirenberg, and then the iconic 1972 version by Andrei Tarkovsky. Both Kubrick's and Tarkovsky's films deserve their own dedicated videos, but these are 2 major milestones, not just in space movies, but in cinema as a whole. There's not much to say here. These are the kind of films everyone has to see. That said, they're not exactly about space. They're more like deep philosophical explorations. What's key though, is that their visual effects and scientific accuracy came remarkably close to modern standards. Around the same time, a totally different kind of sci-fi started taking off, the not-so-scientific kind. The first Star Wars movie hit theaters in 1977, while the Star Trek franchise kicked off as a TV series back in 1966. The first Star Trek film didn't arrive until 1979. That same year, Ridley Scott's Alien also landed on the big screen. But let me stress, these are a different breed. Their success as space fantasies showed that realism wasn't the priority yet. Realism in space movies would only really take hold in the 90s. Wrapping up this quick historical dive, I'm going to step away from the timeline now and talk about the 12 best space movies out there, at least in my personal opinion. Fair warning, this is my take, but I'm all ears for your thoughts in the comments. Feel free to praise me, roast me, or better yet, share something constructive.
Я смотрю, Голин вас командиром экипажа назначил, а я не в курсе.
Олег, я жене вашей обещала, что свяжу вас, если вы меня не будете слушать. Понятно?
The Challenge. You can't skip this one. It's the only big-budget blockbuster that was actually filmed in space. Director Klim Shipenko and actress Yulia Perezil blasted off to the International Space Station from Baikonur on October 5th, 2021, aboard the Soyuz MS-19, spending 12 days in orbit. And let me tell you, the scenes shot in space? Absolutely jaw-dropping. They're worth watching the movie for alone, even if you have to overlook the rest of the mess. The problems? Well, there are 2 actually, make that 3. First, there's way too little space footage. The 35 minutes of space scenes the creators hyped up, nowhere close. Second, the plot is bonkers, like next level nonsensical. And the third, biggest issue? The rush. The script was slapped together on a tight deadline, the filming was rushed, and then they had to rework it back on Earth. The result? Sorry to say, but it's a total train wreck. The potential was insane, the resources were practically limitless, and they had genuinely talented people on board. But this frantic chase for who knows what flushed all that potential down the drain.
Got a mayday from another craft, sir.
Captain, this is a classified mission. We cannot stop. Our destination is Mars, Ursa Station.
Major, this is a mayday. Stopping is protocol.
Any supply craft can answer that call. The mission is the priority, Captain. Do you not hear what I'm saying?
Ad Astra. This 2019 movie is a mixed bag when it comes to the plot, but it's got solid actors who deliver strong performances and some seriously impressive technical execution. The nearly $90 million budget didn't just go to Brad Pitt and Tommy Lee Jones. Set in the near future, where humans have already colonized the solar system, the story follows the main character, played by Brad Pitt, on a dangerous journey across the solar system to find his missing father, an astronaut who vanished during a secret mission near Neptune 16 years earlier. The cosmic visuals and the depiction of a futuristic world are genuinely stunning. Props to the creators for leaning into practical effects, sets, and models. As a cinematic spectacle, it's totally worth watching, but the second you start thinking about the logic or the characters' decisions, yeah, you'll have questions. A lot of them, and no answers. Interestingly, critics seemed to love this film, but audiences weren't as sold. Maybe it's because the movie tries to tackle heavy philosophical questions, like duty versus personal feelings, the eternal father-son dynamic, or loneliness in the vastness of space. Still, I highly recommend giving it a watch at least once. It's an original film.
А теперь давай успокоимся. Зачем нам крутиться без толку?
Ты сумасшедший псих.
Мы пристыковались.
Я отказываюсь продолжать полет вместе с тобой, слышишь?
Вить, а куда ты денешься?
Sally at 7. A solid Russian film about the 1985 mission to save the Soviet space station of the same name. directed by Klim Shipenko, who, a few years later, actually went to space to shoot The Challenge. Let's be real, Saliot, 7 is way better than The Challenge. Most of the movie's action takes place in or around the station. The space scenes? They're awesome, even if they're a bit exaggerated. The scenes on Earth, though? Kinda cringeworthy. Pretty much the same deal as with The Challenge. And don't get me started on the Americans shoehorned into the plot. That's a whole separate question for the screenwriters. The story kicks off when the space station stops responding to signals from Earth, so 2 cosmonauts are sent to fix it. It's not exactly documentary level accurate, but the repair scenes and what happens on the station feel pretty realistic overall. Real-life cosmonaut Victor Savinik, one of the inspirations for the characters, said there's no outright fabrication, but it's tough to watch made-up stuff on screen when you know how it really went down.
Sam, I love you.
I love you.
And I miss you.
I miss you.
And I can't wait to see you. Okay, sweetheart. Bye.
There's also the super cool Moon from 2009, which often pops up on lists of space movies. But calling it a straight-up space film feels like a stretch. The story unfolds on a lunar base manned by a single astronaut. The main character, played by Sam Rockwell, is, figuratively speaking, trapped inside this station. Honestly, swap the moon for a base in the mountains or deep in the ocean, and not much would change. The tense atmosphere, intriguing, and unconventional plot nods to Kubrick's 2001, A Space Odyssey, and an absolutely stellar Sam Rockwell. There's a ton to love here. I highly recommend checking out Moon, but I wouldn't quite call it a space movie.
I know how to wake Aurora up.
Well, that seems like a fine idea. You could use some company.
I'd be stranding her on this ship for the rest of her life.
Well, you can't do that.
Passengers, a captivating space adventure from 2016. This is a full-on sci-fi romance. The story follows a passenger on a spaceship carrying people to a new habitable planet who accidentally wakes up from cryosleep 90 years too early. Not only does he have to figure out what caused the system glitch and try to get back into cryosleep, but he also has to deal with crushing loneliness. This movie stands out for its high level of realism in depicting interstellar space travel. The spaceship looks legit, and the concept of cryosleep actually feels like a plausible way to survive light years of travel. Just like Ad Astra, the cosmic visuals are absolutely stunning. And much like the Brad Pitt film, Passengers is carried hard by its stars. Chris Pratt and especially Jennifer Lawrence are phenomenal. The only bummer is the script, which feels patched together at times, but the technical execution is so good you can easily overlook it. That pool scene, hands down one of the most memorable moments in sci-fi.
Explorer.
Copy. Explorer. Prep airlock.
Airlock engaged. Ready to receive.
Houston, elaborate.
Debris from the missile strike has caused a chain reaction, hitting other satellites and creating new debris. Traveling faster than a high-speed bullet up towards your altitude. Now copy.
Copy all.
Gravity, an over-the-top, no-holds-barred space action flick from Alfonso Cuarón. This movie is basically a dizzying visual roller coaster. The creators went all out with creativity and ingenuity, delivering one of the most spectacular blockbusters in recent years. The plot follows an accident in low Earth orbit that leaves astronauts working on the Hubble Space Telescope stranded in open space, with only a slim chance of survival. Starring Sandra Bullock and George Clooney, the movie does a surprisingly good job with the physics, though some parts, especially the plot's premise, have little to do with reality. Gravity was a massive hit, racking up 10 Oscar nominations, winning 7, and pulling in $723 million at the box office. It's a gorgeous, jaw-dropping movie made with a ton of love, and it shows on screen. But let's be real, it's a thrill ride first and foremost. Fun fact, Robert Downey Jr. was supposed to play Clooney's role, but it didn't pan out.
Заряд скафандр герметичный, открываю внутренний люк шлюзовой камеры.
Не скучай. Я скоро.
The Age of Pioneers. Look, sometimes Russian filmmakers can absolutely deliver top-notch movies, especially when they've got a great story to work with. The Age of Pioneers is one of those gems. This film dives into the historic first human spacewalk and the intense preparation behind it. The budget was relatively modest, about $6 million, the same as Saliot, 7 by the way. Both films were shot at the same time with the same budget, but The Age of Pioneers edges out as the better one. It doesn't go overboard with spectacle, but it's got some seriously impressive scenes. The effects, where they're used, are straight up awesome, Hollywood blockbuster level quality. The real highlight, though, is the chemistry between Yevgeny Mironov and Konstantin Kubensky, who play Alexei Leonov and Pavel Belayev. Kubensky was cast without even needing a screen test. Both actors went all in, training hard for their roles. They logged a combined 4,000 hours in the gym. The film's consultant? None other than Alexei Leonov himself. The creators did their best to keep things accurate, even though some details of the mission are still classified, like the inner workings of the spacecraft's instruments. Sure, the story takes some creative liberties, but overall, it's pretty close to the real deal. Bonus points, there's none of that over-the-top Russian stereotype nonsense in the plot, well, almost none. Despite a few hiccups and a shaky ending, The Age of Pioneers is a genuinely solid film you can watch with enjoyment.
And beyond that, how did they get here? Are they capable of faster than light travel? Are they, you might have a list of questions that, go over, starting with a series of just a handshake binary sequences.
How about we just talk to them before we start throwing math problems at them?
Arrival. This is a stunning film by Denis Villeneuve, released in 2016. Its connection to space is indirect since all the action takes place on Earth, but space is present in a different way here. This movie explores what might happen when aliens show up on our planet. It dives into the idea of first contact with an extraterrestrial civilization. Unlike, say, Blomkamp's District 9, which seems to touch on a similar theme, Arrival does two things differently. First, it actually shows that initial contact, and second, it feels completely unique. The plot kicks off when several mysterious objects, clearly alien in origin, appear on Earth. Authorities assemble teams of scientists to study these visitors and try to establish communication. The main character, played by Amy Adams, is a linguist tasked with deciphering the aliens' language. The film is gorgeous, tense, and kind of groundbreaking in its own way. And the best part? It probably comes closest to showing what a real first contact with aliens might look like. Well, more or less.
So, I gotta figure out a way to grow 3 years worth of food here on a planet where nothing grows. Luckily, I'm a botanist.
The Martian. This 2015 gem, directed by Ridley Scott and based on Andy Weir's book, centers on an astronaut stranded on Mars after his team leaves him behind, thinking he's dead. Eventually, he manages to signal Earth that he's alive. Now, he's got to survive the harsh conditions of an alien planet with extremely limited resources, while Earth scrambles to put together a rescue mission. Matt Damon stars in the lead, and he absolutely knocks it out of the park, giving 200%. Fun fact, they wouldn't let him lose weight for the film's finale, so they used a body double. Still, Damon had plenty of room to flex his acting chops. The movie, like the book, tries to stay grounded in reality with varying success. Even the Mars mission depicted feels like a nod to real planned expeditions. The creators went all out. Everything on screen feels believable, almost tangible, with no over-the-top sci-fi vibes. The space travel scenes, in particular, look incredibly realistic. That said, they did lean on a fair amount of artistic liberties for the sake of drama.
Look, I could swing around that neutron star to decelerate.
No, it's not that. It's time. The gravity on that planet will slow our clock compared to Earth's drastically.
Oh, how bad?
Well, every hour we spend on that planet will be 7 years back on Earth.
Interstellar. Why isn't Interstellar the best space movie out there? It's one of the most visually breathtaking films in cinema history and hands down Christopher Nolan's finest work. Set in a near future where Earth has basically turned against its people, humanity is forced to search for a new home. Enter a wormhole, a shortcut through space-time that lets you zip from our solar system to another galaxy in no time. Stunning cinematography, a deep story, a killer cast, and, of course, jaw-dropping visuals, space, other planets, a black hole, a wormhole. It's all shown with epic scale and sheer magnificence. Some scenes literally give you goosebumps. Add to that Hans Zimmer's haunting soundtrack that hits you right in the feels. Sure, toward the end, the movie veers into straight-up nonsense, but at least it doesn't completely break the story's logic. The best part? As mesmerizing as the space and spaceflight look, it's shockingly close to how things might actually be in reality. Nolan's film meticulously follows the work of theoretical physicist Kip Thorne, who won a Nobel Prize for his research on black holes. Thorne was adamant from the start that nothing in the movie would violate known laws of physics. He basically made Nolan swear to it. So, everything you see about science and scientific phenomena on screen, it's legit. The team spent a year rendering the black hole, with 30 people working on it, and some frames took over 100 hours to render. The visuals were so groundbreaking that they even led to actual scientific papers. But here's the thing, it's not just science. It's also a damn good movie. A capital M movie, even if it's a $165 million blockbuster. So why not call Interstellar the ultimate space film? Well, there's just a bit too much fantasy in the plot.
But we're able to talk about it because of previous flights. Every flight took on new objectives and left us with very few additions to be completed. We're very grateful to those people who made it possible for us to be here today.
First Man, a biopic about Neil Armstrong, the first human to set foot on the moon. Few movies show the sheer struggle and sacrifices behind monumental achievements, like, say, Walking on the Moon. This is one of those films. Directed by Damien Chazelle, the genius behind Whiplash and La La Land, First Man drives home just how tough it was for the lunar mission team and their families during the preparation and the flight itself. Stellar performances from the cast and Justin Hurwitz's incredible soundtrack create an unforgettable vibe. The lunar landing scene? Absolutely phenomenal. First Man is undeniably a masterpiece, but its slow pacing, gritty realism, somber and sometimes downright depressing atmosphere, and heavy focus on the characters' inner struggles mean it's not for everyone. Still, you've got to at least give it a shot. What's also cool is the technical execution. The film uses a surprising amount of practical effects, models, miniatures, and sets. Even better, the filmmakers wove in real archival footage of the moon mission. The lunar landing scene, along with many others, was shot using virtual production technology, not just a green screen, but an LED screen displaying pre-rendered visuals. VFX artists created multiple versions of the moon's surface based on actual satellite footage and photos, making everything look insanely realistic. The scenes of astronauts walking on the moon's surface outside the landing module were filmed in a studio, with low-gravity effects achieved using wires.
This is Houston. Say again, please.
Houston, we have a problem. We have a main busby undervolt. We've got a lot of thruster activity here, Houston. It just went offline. Oh, there's another master alarm, Houston.
I'm checking the quad. Christ, that was no repress back.
Apollo 13. And here it is, the best space movie ever. Why? 2 reasons. First, it's a brilliantly shot film with a killer score by my favorite film composer, James Horner. Second, it's as realistic as it gets. It's not a documentary, but the filmmakers went all out to portray real events with the utmost respect. Apollo 13 is another movie about an American lunar mission, but this time it's about the ill-fated Apollo expedition. The 13th spacecraft in the program was supposed to land the 3rd human crew on the moon, but a catastrophic accident not only derailed the landing, it put the entire crew's lives on the line. In the director's chair is Ron Howard, the ultimate pro when it comes to biographical films, and starring none other than Tom Hanks. Apollo 13 is based on the book Lost Moon by astronaut James Lovell, one of the mission's real-life crew members, and the guy behind the iconic line, "Houston, we have a problem." Hanks plays Lovell, so you can bet it feels pretty darn close to how things actually went down. That authenticity gives the movie a huge edge. Oh, and fun fact, Lovell even has a small cameo. The film is gripping, intense, and dripping with atmosphere. You're glued to the screen from start to finish. As I said, it's shot and acted flawlessly, and I could sing its praises all day long. Need proof? It raked in $355 million at the box office on a $52 million budget, earned rave reviews from audiences and critics, and scored 9 Oscar nominations.